All righty, recording in progress. What's up, folks? I'm just checking. I'm connected. What's up, y'all? This is Alex Clark Youngblood, Christopher Alexander Robert Clark Youngblood. It is Christmas Eve. Excuse my ears are popping. 2024, as I go over this little mountain hill range, about an hour north of Los Angeles, California. I'm taking a little Christmas Eve road trip into the mountains out near Sequoia National Forest. Um, What's popping this week, dude? Seahawks lost to my Vikings. That was a weird game for me. I grew up a Vikings fan, like diehard Vikings fan. It's all so bizarre, man. Uh, Me and our Lord, our head coach Mike McDonald started watching football together in like 97, 98 with this our summer camp counselor at the time, this guy named Dan Keeley, who I need to reach out to. I feel bad that I haven't reached out to Dan because he really was a significant. He was the most significant father figure I ever had in my life. Honestly, this dude was summer camp counselor, then basketball coach. Mike and I used to go over to his house and watch football all the time, like all a bunch of different locations, sports bars, other dudes' houses. I know it sounds a little creepy, but it wasn't. But it wasn't for me, at least. I've actually talked to Mike about that in the past. Like, was anything weird going on with that dude? But no, it's all good. And honestly, it's some of the most formative and enjoyable times of my life. Watching football with like a father figure and friend, and Mike and I did fantasy football like in 90, I think it was for the 98 season with a bunch of grown men in some dude's basement who did the draft. And then it wasn't even like pre fantasy on the internet. It was, we would just do it out of newspapers, like do the scoring out of newspapers. Um, and that dude, that camp counselor, that Dan, he was from Minnesota. He was a Vikings fan. And so through him, through osmosis, I became a huge Vikings fan, like die hard. Like that was the coolest, most important thing in my life as an elementary school, middle schooler, man, was Vikings games on Sundays, following the team. And I was die hard, like balls deep into Vikings football. Fuck, into my through college. I guess really after college, like sports started lifting in legitimate importance in my life, but I still always followed the Vikings, and I've still always followed the NFL less and less each year. But the COVID year is the only year that I just didn't follow anything, didn't watch any games, any highlights, follow, listen to any podcasts, play fantasy, bet on any of that shit. COVID year, I was like, I'm done with this shit. Um, but I got back in because my buddy Lucas, who I live with and work for, we did a fantasy league together last year. And then, of course, I've always been keeping an eye on Mike's career peripherally, but never was a huge Ravens fan or anything, which I kind of feel bad about now that, like, man, when is the D coordinator of the Ravens? Although he was only D coordinator. That's the thing. He was only D coordinator for the Ravens for a year and then Michigan for a year before that. And before that, he was an assistant. So it's now the head coach of an actual team. It's like you can't help but fuck the Vikings and uh follow this dude's career. So, although as I've mentioned before, dude, I've been consuming so much NFL and so much football, and I'm really not nearly as into it as I was, obviously, when I was a child, but even 5, 10 years ago. So, you know, I think I'll still always follow. I'm always going to follow whatever team Mike is coaching peripherally. I don't know if I'll be watching like 2 to 3 hours, like every snap of every game like I have this season. Uh, but it's cool, man. And last night I was even consuming like all of the Seattle Seahawks YouTube content that they do, like Mike, miking up the players in the game, all access footage, to each of the games, and they do this like documentary Hard Knock style series every 2 or 3 games called The Sound. It's actually really well done, like behind the scenes of the team. So I was watching all those. I hadn't been watching, caught up on all those last night. Anyway, the Vikings played the Seahawks last Sunday, and I still have obviously great affinity for the Vikings. I've been watching their games the second half of the season, and they're like one of the best teams in the league. And I knew that was going to be a tough one because I've been watching the Vikings and following losses. I know they're good. And I've been following the Seahawks even closer. And I've just been following football as a fan for a long time. And good teams and bad teams, you can kind of tell where teams are at, right? As far as their performance level, and you can see it. And the Seahawks are going to be a very good team. I have the utmost faith in Mike. They've been playing so much better since the bye week. And, you know, all things considered, given the inexperience of the entire coaching staff, they're playing extremely well and they're still in the playoff hunt. But I knew that game with the Vikes this past Sunday was going to be a tough one, and it was. Although they hung in there, man, the Seahawks were in there the entire fucking game, and I'm telling you, that Vikings team is solid. Like it's probably the second best Vikings team I've ever followed, maybe third best being 98, 15-1 Vikings that lost the Buccaneers the playoffs that were like, that's Randy Moss's rookie year, Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, Robert Smith. I mean, just this juggernaut offense, the greatest offense in NFL history at the time. Then there's the '09 team with Favre in Favre's first year. That team with Adrian Peterson and this unbelievable offensive line, sick defense, the Williams brothers in the middle and defense, Antoine Winfield. Like that was a solid ass team that went to NFC Championship and should have won if it wasn't fucking Bounty Gate and the Saints. This Vikings team's probably third best. I mean, it's right up there. This Vikings team is sick. So hoping the Seahawks will see them again in the playoffs or whatever, NFC Championship, whatever it may be. It was a tough one for me to watch. I was pulling for the Seahawks. I wanted the Seahawks to win, but I knew it was going to be a tough matchup. And, also it's weird because also I like the Vikings. So I'm like, it does suck that the Seahawks lost and I want them to be the one, Seahawks are die at this point. Coach Mike could die, if he goes to the fucking Dolphins next year. I'd be a Dolphins fan. So sorry, Seattle. But yeah, Vikes won. Vikes are, control their own destiny now for the the NFC playoffs, for the playoff, sorry, I'm driving, looking at new landscapes that I'm unfamiliar with. Super cool. Pretty Southern California, heading up towards Sequoia National Park area. So Vikes control their own destiny for the number one seed in the NFC, which is insane. But the Seahawks also, I think, control their own destiny as far as making the playoffs. They got the Bears on Thursday night. Today's Tuesday, Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Christmas. Following day after Christmas, they got the Bears on the road in Chicago. So Bears suck, and they seem kind of in disarray. But super talented quarterback, talented squad. Actually, the Bears have very talent across the roster. They just had a shitty coaching situation. And that shows you the Bears hired this dude. Was it Eberflus who their coach was? Anyway, I know they hired some guy that there was a lot of skepticism about who the fuck is this guy? Why is he getting a head coaching job? And their offensive coordinator as well, who was the coordinator for the Seahawks last season, who apparently also is, once again, I don't want to judge anyone. I don't know the insides. I'm just listening to podcasts and shit. But apparently their offensive coordinator, the coordinator for the Seahawks last year's, was kind of laughably bad. There's an interview with Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver for the Seahawks, where he's kind of laughing about how bad it was to be coached by this guy last year. Anyway, that guy got canned early on, and they canned the coach. And he's a first-year coach just like Mike, so it's good. That shows, this ain't fucking easy, man. It's not like you can just be some bro, smart guy, whatever, and take over an NFL roster. Everything's going to be hunky-dory, kind of set in place. This incredibly difficult job that even allegedly super qualified people are not good at. So tough matchup. It's gonna be shitty weather, I think, but the Hawks should pull that one out, and then they close out the season in Los Angeles. Here, I'm looking at a billboard that says "A New Way of Policing: City of Lancaster Police seeking experienced motor and patrol units." Interesting. Talk about a tough job. Jesus, being a fucking cop, man. What a valuable fucking job. The most valuable job we have in our society. Teacher, I guess you could put up there, but honestly, I think cop is number one. And just a fucking tough job, man. And there's a lot of cops that are fucking dicks, and there's a lot of cops that aren't. Hopefully the minority. The minority. I think most cops are cool, but we all seen the shitty interactions and I've had, believe me, my issue with cops. But man, it's incredibly important job. I respect the fuck of that job. I think it's, if anything, it needs to be more funded. Why am I going on a corporate? Um, but just the laws need to change, right? They should be only enforcing, you know, laws against people that are hurting other people or stewardship for other people, not drug offenses and shit like that. Anyway, Seahawks closed the season out here in LA against the Rams, which is, this NFC West division is kind of the only division that's up in the air. I believe in the NFL right now. So it's, it's cool that it's the Seahawks, Mike's team and our new team, our friend's new team, and then LA here in LA that the final game of the season is going to take place here. So I'm going to be there for sure. God, hope they win. Yeah, that'd be very cool. So yeah, that's the Seahawks. Um, Still so fucking cool, man. One of those episodes of the behind the scenes show that the Seahawks YouTube channel does yesterday was the episode of when the Seahawks played the Falcons. And so it was like Mike's homecoming to Atlanta, and they interviewed um two guys. One guy that shit possibility may actually hear this is on the text feed. Daniel, never mind, I won't say people's name. Daniel. Um, and he was on there, did an awesome interview, so cool. And then another one of Mike's friends that I remember from childhood. It was never no, I knew Daniel, went to high school with Daniel in college. The other friend I remember hanging out with a couple times at Mike's house and seeing around, but not good friends with. But it's so cool, man, to see these kids talking about their buddy from childhood and his journey becoming an NFL head coach and seeing his dad being interviewed and seeing the story of it. And there's they have pictures of him and shit from high school and everything. It was, man, so fucking cool, so inspiring. I like literally brings tears to my eyes every time when it's like when they're talking about Mike and a journey. Anytime, whether it's a podcast or I'm watching the game, when it's like non-football related, they talk about Mike, the human being, and his journey as like the youngest head coach in the NFL right now. And he wasn't a guy to play in the NFL. He didn't play beyond high school and all. And it was just another kind of hyper successful and hyper disciplined, but like one of the boys, in college and high school, to do what he's done and pursuing his passion and dream is so fucking inspiring, cool, and it brings tears to my eyes every fucking time they talk about just like him and his journey. So that was very cool to watch last night. Um, just such a cool and inspiring thing, Mike. So thank you, brother. Always. I know I text him that all the time. If there's anything you know, I I text him that all the time. Like, thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for showing us the way in a way, or showing people. I don't know. For me, it's almost like a new lesson: the art of discipline and singular pursuit, hard work, essentially. Sounds elementary, but it's profound of what he has done. Other than that, football shit. College first on the college football playoffs went down. Georgia, wearing my Georgia sweatshirt. On the way to the woods here, is gonna play Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Uh, for in what is, I guess that's the quarterfinals of the college football playoffs. It was cool, very fucking cool. College football so cool. I'm going on rants about that every week. College football so cool, and this is like the coolest part of it all is this like 12-team playoff. The first round playoff being in the home games. So that was super dope to see as well. What else is cracking? In my personal life, nothing, or in my life, same shit. I got the girls, like, have my nanny job where I just, pick the girls up and I take them to the park, but I'm always around with them in their lives, and it's a blessing to see them grow. And man, they're like the greatest joy in my life. Those two little girls that are already been mine, just seeing them growing, being a part of their lives, and getting to see them every day and talk to them, and us kind of learning, grow together, and talk to them about life. And it's just so cool and a magical experience. So that's number one always. And then training martial arts, jujitsu, and Muay Thai. I've talked about this. I think my kind of training regimen now is 3 times: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do gi, no gi, no gi, jujitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and gi jujitsu back to back to back. And it's just like super effective training for these tournaments that I'm trying to do. Jujitsu tournaments every let's see, I did 4 last year. I want to do 5 this year. I was looking at one. The first I was going to do was going to be in San Jose on January 17th, but I had COVID the last couple of weeks. Um, so I take a couple weeks off of training, and I'm still kind of getting my gas tank back. This is just my first week of training back this past week. Still, I feel I need to get my gas tank back in order. And at this, I'd be good to do it, but I want to go in fully confident and also want to burn myself out in this shit. I train hard and I train a lot. Um, and when I train, like every day, I go as hard as I can. Pretty much, I don't take rounds off if there's ever a time. Like I don't have a training partner, which is a lot. It's a different story. I'll do calisthenics or run the weight room, do some kettlebells, or hop in the air dive for that 5 minute, 5 6 minute round, whatever. I don't have a partner, so I like to go hard. Um, I take it very seriously as far as like my effort level. I don't take it seriously as far as like my personality and friendliness. I try to be as goofy and lighthearted as possible in there. That's just my natural way of being. But also, my effort level is high, um, and that's how it's always going to be. So that's like the second biggest priority in my life. I want to do jiu-jitsu tournaments. I want to win. Frankly, candidly, I'm not just there to participate. I do believe like the participation in itself is beautiful. I'm saying beautiful because the landscape around me is fucking beautiful right now. It is beautiful. I think participation, just showing up to me, there truly is a victory in of itself. It's scary. It's in a minority of people, a very small percentage of the human population is doing martial arts consistently and regularly. And I've done pretty much all. I've had a very, I feel like, thorough and widespread athletic sample size throughout my life and fitness and shit and physical activity. And this is the dopest shit that I've discovered so far. And it's no joke. It's not just for fun. It's very serious business and very serious results outside of just like your physical fitness or whatever. And it's also super fun. Um, so participation in these tournaments is just this single participation in of itself is I think very commendable. Anyone who does it. Minority of humans do martial arts, and even smaller, minority of that minority does competitions. Competitions, and it's scary and it's nerve-wracking. You could seriously get hurt, and it takes a lot of training if you want to go in there and be competitive. Um, so I do respect myself, and I'm proud of myself just for doing that. But I'm there to win. If I'm being frank, I want to win. I expect to win, and that's my goal is to win every time. So I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna start picking up the kickboxing Muay Thai sparring this year as we enter 2025. If that progresses well in 2026, I'm gonna then start getting into the MMA sparring. This is kind of the rough plan. And if that goes well, kind of eyeballing 27, 28 for an MMA fight. 2027, 2028 for an MMA fight, you know, for my 40th birthday kind of celebration. And yeah, just one, man. I'm so into MMA. I'm so into UFC. And I, you know, the impetus for this kind of series of podcasts the last several months has been the Seahawks and Coach Mike and football and all that shit. But quite frankly, I'm much more into mixed martial arts than I am football. And so yeah, I just don't feel comfortable how balls deep I am into MMA to not have ever done it. It's cool. I train it now, and like I have to remind myself every time I'm in there, like, dude, this is it. You're doing it. You're doing the shit that you've wanted to do for several years, or a few years now. And COVID, hey, it was the opportunity in California to do, or in LA to do that, to train, and I'm doing it now, and it's super cool. So I have to remind myself. It's become such a regular part of my life, and something I just do kind of without even thinking about it every day, like brushing my teeth. That I need to do a better job of stopping and smelling the roses and kind of just appreciating, like, yeah, man, that's what you do every day is go to the gym and practice fighting people and fight people or grapple. And I don't call it fighting because it's, we're not punching each other all on the face and shit like that. Um, but engage in hand-to-hand combat, martial arts with other grown men who in many cases are bigger or younger or certainly more experienced. So it's cool, man. So yeah, eyeballing potential MMA fight. Now the caveat with all of that is I've done very very limited kickboxing sparring. In fact, over the last several weeks, me and my buddy Anthony, who's a martial arts novice as well, he hasn't done any jujitsu yet, but he's been doing training Muay Thai for the last several months. I'm so proud of him for getting into that. He's a huge UFC fan as well. One of the few UFC fans I knew, the only UFC fan really I knew ever. Um, Before I started training myself, and he just got into it in the last several months, and so we've been coming to my backyard. We've been sparring, like punching each other in the face, doing some kickboxing sparring in the backyard. We've only done it twice, and um, I've only had several sparring experiences outside of that in the gym. So it's very enjoyable. It's super. It's a big, huge adrenaline rush to punch someone, get punched in the face, and do all that, and just like rolling is in jujitsu. Uh, but it's more for me. The consequence is more serious. Although fucking dislocating your shoulder, getting your ACL torn, or Achilles snapped in jujitsu is no fucking joke. But the brain trauma for me is my number one concern. So as I would like to get some brain imaging done before I seriously start getting into it. And then so sometime in the next 6 months, get some brain imaging done, and then do a year or two of Muay Thai sparring and see if I can get some further brain imaging done every 6 months or so, just to make sure everything's on point, and maybe some cognitive testing. Man, I don't want to fuck around my brain. So, but it's definitely something I want to do, MMA, and that requires getting punched in the face, practice, and training, and the risk of suffering a serious traumatic brain injury in the actual competition itself. Uh, So we shall see. I will continue to discuss that in further episodes, and yeah, as we get into the new year here and as the football season ends, I will start getting into. I think I'm gonna start doing more MMA discussion, and then more life discussion, as I've talked about before, getting into studying the cosmic calendar, the history of existence, the history of the universe, the history of planet Earth, the history of humanity on planet Earth, and over of course several years just getting in. Let's say like 5 years from now, basically turning this show into almost like political, societal talk more, like focusing on the modern day. I want to catch up to modern day, right? I started this whole thing studying my past in a lot of ways, interviewing the first people I ever met up into friends, like modern day friends. So it's kind of like a study of my own life through people that I know. And then now we're in this little phase where it's like, whoa, this cool thing is happening. What an inspiring, cool, fun thing that also allows me to include some of those my modern day friends in the just talking football and shit on Zoom. Uh, so now I want to go back and I kind of understand myself better and how I relate to the world, or like kind of more of my role in the world, as I've been doing this podcast for the last 6 years. Um, so now I want to get to know that world. I kind of know myself a lot better, martial arts, yoga, meditation, psychedelics, which are all things I will continue to do, is allowing me to know myself. Now I want to know the world, the universe, the history of our species. um, Learn. I've kind of introspected, I feel like, a lot for the past 6 years, decade really. Now it's time to is retrospective word, learn about the world around me. So I want to start at the beginning. Like I'm obsessive and chronological, so start at the Big Bang, or whatever the beginning of existence was, if there's a beginning, and what that whole concept. But for the purposes of the study, right, I think we do need to acknowledge the existence of chronological time, right? So let's say start at the Big Bang, and then the early universe, formation of our solar system, formation of the planet, kind of the history of the planet and what it's been through. Like the physical planet itself, and then the history of life on the planet, what the history of life on the planet has been through, extinction events, dinosaurs, all kinds of shit, and then the history of our species. And then the most interesting of that will be human history, right? And that's when I hope I can like get on the road and start traveling again. The course of my life, I don't know what it's going to look like after I'm in the next couple of years or a few years, however much longer I am here manning Joe and M. Uh, but yeah, eventually once I get to the point of studying human history, I want to And even before that, maybe through the formation of Earth, I want to get on the road and go to these places, right? So, just for instance, in theory, like starting in Africa, in like the Congo or wherever we think uh, the first Homo sapien was, the first intelligent primates, going to Central Africa, and then from there, like tracking the spread of humanity, right? From Africa, we spread into Northern Africa, up into Europe, and the Middle East, up into Asia, and these different lines of human evolution and migration, and kind of track those lines and track the study of human history and like in those actual places. I really want to dedicate my life to that, traveling the world and studying human history. And however long that takes, hopefully through that exploration, meet a life partner, a mother of my children at some point, and hopefully settle down. Or perhaps, I don't know what the chronology of all this will be, or if, it's like do one thing, then move on to the other thing, move on to the other thing. But that's kind of a mission in life is traveling having children eventually, traveling the world, studying human history and what all of this is that uh, we are involved here in life on this in this earthly realm here on Earth. Uh, and then potentially taking that knowledge, and setting up a school or of something of that sort to share this knowledge and create a space of critical thinking and learning for my children and other children and adults, if it evolves into that. And then potentially maybe getting into politics after that, running for office and trying to liberate humanity from the shackles of government and taxation and kind of free the individual, that individual human, to fully express themselves and do what they want with their limited time here on Earth without having to be subject to um, communism, I guess, for lack of a better term. I don't mean that like political sense, but like I believe the individual should be every individual human should have the right to fully express themselves in whatever way they want, as long as they're not harming anyone else. And I think in a lot of ways, government limits that. In some ways, government helps, but I think it's a deeper discussion. Crazy storm clouds on the horizon. It's a deeper discussion, but I feel like you get to a point where government kind of assists. Government should be there to protect people's freedoms, I guess, is kind of the more general statement, and protect people's right to express themselves rather than limiting their freedoms and their actions and their behavior. But there's a lot more I need to learn about that from a philosophical standpoint, from a real world standpoint, and from just a life experience standpoint. Um, so I certainly wouldn't want to put myself in the position of a politician or bureaucrat who is making laws and rules for other humans when I readily recognize, I have a lot of learning and living to do myself. And no one is ever going to reach this point of ultimate enlightenment where they're like approved to be able to make laws or represent other humans. Ultimately, I don't think that's really a good concept. I think we can get to a point where no human is representing another human. Every human is just representing themselves. But once again, I don't know. Those are just kind of ethereal ideas right now for me, and I'd like to kind of make those more concrete. And I think there's a lot of experience in living that I have to do, and as human beings, we have to do over the next several few decades before I would entertain the idea of running for public office. Um, so yeah, I think that's it for this week. It is Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everyone. I love you all. Yeah, always do your best and be nice to people and smile. And, um, I think kind of treat this life like take it seriously, but also like a game. Like, it's full of hardships and difficulties and sadness, but it's also like full of awesomeness and beauty and happiness and love. And it's this very unique experience that we've all been granted. None of us, so it's make the most out of it. And I think being kind and friendly to people is kind of number one on that. And then also just like kind of following your passions and your instincts and your impulses and what makes you happy. It's very trite and woo to say, but yeah, it's like this cool video game that we all got plopped into. And no video game is fun if there's not a bunch of challenges and hurdles and failure to overcome. Um, but also like, goals. We, especially in this country, like where our survival is basically guaranteed, we can dedicate a lot of our time to our own self-actualization and like pursuing goals and interests. That's kind of like a cool video game mentality. And to bring it all back to football and the Seahawks, like Coach Mike shows us that, right? Like, yo, I love football. That's what like fires me up the most. That's what fills my soul the most. It makes me the most happy and most passionate. I can't play a professional player, but what's even the cooler way to be involved? I become a coach, and you can do that. With enough hard work, focus, sacrifice, you can do that. So whatever it is in life that you want to do, or a bunch of things you want to do, you can do that too. It just, it takes struggle to get there. Like a video game. Bulls defeat the boss in order to win the game. All right, I love you all. Peace.